Once upon a time in the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob. Now Jacob had two families, and you know how it goes with families. They can be close, or they can be divided. And sadly, in Jacob's case, his families weren't exactly seeing eye to eye. But then there was this one son, Joseph, and he was the apple of Jacob's eye. You could say he was Jacob's favorite. Let me tell you, Jacob loved that boy more than all his other sons combined. And it wasn't just a bit of favoritism either. Jacob showed his love for Joseph in a big way. One day he made him a special gift, a coat, an amazing coat with many colors. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. But you know how it is with gifts. While Jacob thought he was showing his love, it ended up making the other sons angry. They were jealous of Joseph and his fancy coat. And don't get me wrong, Jacob wasn't trying to brag or show off. He just loved his son, you know, like any parent loves their kid. But the other sons didn't see it that way. They were jealous and bitter. And Joseph, he didn't help matters much. See, Jacob also told Joseph some pretty amazing dreams. Dreams about the future. Dreams that one day his brothers would bow down to him and show him respect. Yeah, you could say he was a little cocky about it, bragging about these dreams. And to be honest, it just made his brothers even angrier. They thought Joseph was arrogant, and they waited for the perfect chance to teach him a lesson. Now, when that chance finally came, it happened far from home, in the fields where the sheep grazed. Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, to see how they were doing. But what he didn't know was that his brothers had planned something terrible. As soon as Joseph approached, they pounced on him, grabbed him, ripped that fancy coat off his back, and threw him into a nearby pit. It was dark, deep, and really, it was just an empty hole dug for storing grain. Now, Joseph's brothers, they stood around that pit, and I can only imagine how scared and confused he must have been. And then they started arguing, wondering what to do with him. One brother suggested killing Joseph, but another said, "No, let's not do that. Let's sell him to some traders, some foreigners passing by." And that's exactly what they did. They sold their own brother, their own flesh and blood, just for 20 pieces of silver. Think about that for a moment. His own brothers, the people who should have loved and cared for him, had betrayed him, had abandoned him, and now he was about to leave, to go where no one knew him, to become a stranger in a strange land. As for his brothers, after they got that money, they dipped their bread in some blood and then ran to their father Jacob. And they told him a heartbreaking lie, a lie about a wild animal attacking Joseph, a lie about finding his blood-stained coat. They broke their father's heart, convinced him that their little brother was dead. And Jacob, he believed them. He grieved for his son, mourning the loss of the one he loved so dearly. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken away from Canaan, from everything he knew, and he ended up in Egypt. Now, his new owners, they brought him to the palace of a powerful man named Potiphar, a high official in Pharaoh's army. Joseph was basically a slave at this point, working hard, hoping for a better day, waiting for a chance to prove himself. And slowly but surely, through his hard work and his honesty, he caught the attention of his master Potiphar. Joseph was promoted from being a slave to being a manager, basically in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. And this might have seemed like a happy ending, like a promotion at work, a sign that things were getting better. But in reality, it was just another test for Joseph, because soon enough, trouble came again. Potiphar's wife, she wanted Joseph, but he refused her advances. He didn't want to cheat on his master or do something wrong. And when she kept bothering him, he even told her, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Well, I guess refusing her advances made Potiphar's wife angry and also desperate, because what she did next was cruel. She accused Joseph of trying to attack her, of doing bad things to her. And even though Joseph kept saying he was innocent, no one believed him. He was thrown into jail, thrown into a dark, dank prison cell. And here he was, a slave, wrongly accused, stuck in prison. Life seemed to be a series of one setback after another. But you know what? Even in the depths of despair, Joseph didn't lose hope. Instead, he trusted God, continued to serve, and he even helped the other prisoners with their problems, interpreting their dreams. Now, if you read the Bible, you probably know what happened next. Joseph correctly interpreted the dreams of two fellow prisoners, the butler, and the baker. He predicted that the butler would regain his freedom, but the baker would be executed. And just as Joseph predicted, both men met their fates. The butler got his job back, and the baker lost his head. But here's the interesting thing. When the butler got his freedom, he didn't remember Joseph. He didn't come back to rescue him from prison. You know, sometimes people can be like that. We forget those who helped us, especially when it's inconvenient. But listen to this. After a while, Pharaoh had his own troubling dreams. Scary dreams that no one in his palace could figure out. And desperate for answers, Pharaoh called for the guy who had interpreted other prisoners' dreams, the guy who was still stuck in jail. The butler remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh, "There's this guy in prison who can explain your dreams." So Pharaoh had Joseph brought before him, and Joseph, relying on God's help, interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. Basically, Pharaoh had dreamt about 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine, and Joseph told him that it was all true. So Pharaoh made Joseph the leader in charge of preparing for the famine. He gave him complete control over Egypt's resources, and he said, "Only in matters relating to the throne will you be inferior to me." Wow, right? From prison to the palace. That's quite a leap. And Pharaoh even made Joseph's future even brighter by marrying him off to a nice Egyptian woman. In fact, he gave Joseph 2 sons, making him a father and a respected member of Egyptian society. Who's like that Joseph went from being a slave to being in charge of the whole country? And do you know why? Because Joseph trusted God even when he was in the pit, even when he was in prison. He never gave up on his faith or his values. And in the end, God honored that trust. But here's the coolest part of the story. Remember those brothers who sold him? Yeah, they didn't know it at the time, but they were actually helping God carry out his plan. You see, Joseph was destined to save not just Egypt, but also his own family and many other people from starvation during that great famine. And it was because of his brothers' actions, as painful as they were, that he was in a position to do that. Joseph didn't hold on to anger or hate. He forgave them and welcomed them warmly, even though they had treated him so badly. Honestly, it's a story of hardship, of betrayal, but it's also a story of incredible faith, of God's power to turn things around, of the triumph of good over evil, and most importantly, of forgiveness. You know, we all face tough times. Sometimes it feels like life is pushing us down, throwing us into pits or prisons. But Joseph's story tells us that no matter what, if we trust in God and keep our faith, He can turn our situations around. We can rise from the bottom to the top, from despair to hope. We just need to hold on, keep believing. And remember, even when we face betrayal, even when we suffer, God is still in control. And what seems like a setback could actually be the start of something great. So next time you find yourself in a tough spot, remember Joseph and draw strength from his story. Believe that even in the darkest moments, God is working behind the scenes, turning your pain into purpose, turning your struggles into stepping stones for a brighter future. Because just like Joseph, you have the strength to overcome your challenges and the faith to trust in God's plan for you. You are stronger than you think, and your story is not over yet. Don't give up. Keep going. God has something amazing planned for you. So thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us continue to create more inspiring content. Also, subscribe to our channel to receive notifications about our latest videos. We release new videos every week, each offering a unique perspective on life, faith, and everything in between. Lastly, if you have a comment, a suggestion, or just want to connect, please leave a comment below. We love hearing from our viewers and responding whenever we can. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Until then, stay blessed and keep believing in the goodness of God.